Well, most of what I've been doing up to now, since the last video, is the wiring. Loads of changes I've made, mainly because of the M unit, which I've tried to install, which I am installing. Lovely device. 12-volt distribution panel at the back, because you've only got one auxiliary output on here, so you have to come out of there into this, and then it will go off to the auxiliary 12 volts, which is all the ECU, 12 volt for the neutral light and stuff like that. Also anything else you need to run, all has to come off of this, so you have to add a distribution panel really, so you can get your 12 volts at your auxiliary to everything else that needs it. Got my speedo, nice little Daytona speedo. Interestingly enough, a lot of people have had trouble with digital speedos on the Roadstar, Wildstar. And when I looked at the wiring, it's not as actually simple as it makes out. What you have a trigger which comes to here, which is easy enough, but on the bike you have a sensor that's got 3 wires. Now most hall sensors you've got earth, 12 volt and the trig, which isn't a problem, 3 wires, okay. But on these bikes none of them go to 12 volt, none of them go to earth, and the trig goes to the speedo and then back to the ECU, the TPS and the crank trigger. So the problem was, once you've disconnected the speedo, you've got 2 wires. Okay, the white one is the trig, that's no problem. The black and white, I think it's black and white, black and blue goes to the TPS, the internal trigger. That is actually the earth, so you can leave that alone because that's still connected to everything else. The other one, which was the one I had the problem with, is the blue and yellow. That was supposedly going to be the supply, but when you measured it fortunately from the other bike, it's actually 11 volt, just under 11 volt, so it's not 12 volt DC, which would fluctuate slightly with the voltage with the charging system, so it's regulated to some degree. So what I've basically done is added 3 or 4, I'm not quite sure yet, I've got 3 at the moment, IM4004 diodes in series to drop the voltage down. It's the easiest way to do it really. You get about 0.7, 0.5, 0.7 drop per diode, so if you run 3 of them in a row, it will bring the voltage down and give it a little bit of leeway, so you'll end up with 10.5 volts, something like that, which should be perfectly fine to run it. Why it's not 12 volt I don't know, it's just the way Yamaha do it. So that should cure the problem with the speedo. The other thing is the indicator lights, the idiot lights. I made this little unit up out of a bit of alley. Got some pics. And that will go on the side of the speedo, something like that. just a block of alley really. And I've almost finished the complete wiring diagram. Now you probably can't see this at the moment because I've just drawn it all out in pencil, but you'll see, get up closer, you can see some of this. It's all drawn out in pencil. Most of the ECU circuitry around here is the same as the bike. You've got the speed sensor, which is 3 wires I was talking about, TPS unit. This is, I've tried to draw this up the same as it's roughly drawn on the bike, on the original diagram, so it's easier to follow. And then we come down here, we've got the M unit, which just supplies battery feed in, auxiliary comes out to the two 12-volt buses, and the M unit comes along to the relevant parts, indicators, horn, side and brake light. The other interesting thing is the starter, or the start button. I was going to use the start through the M unit, but again with the Yamaha they've got some really strange wiring. The starter switch doesn't actually go to earth. It's the starter relay is supplied with 12 volt all the time, and then the starter button goes back to the ECU. Why? I've got no idea. I'm assuming that must go down to earth at some point, because when you press the start button it works. So I've just kept that whole system and put a start button down on the indicator, on the ignition switch. Which is down here. So I've just got the start button and the key. The bottom one's going to be the choke. And that lot is basically most of the wires, well, all the wires plus a few other bits and pieces, but most of that is wires that have come off the bike that are no longer needed. Fuse box, relays, a ton of other bits and pieces. And this is where we are at the moment. All these are going to be connected to the auxiliary out. They're to feed the coils and bits and pieces. And then we come up here, and this lot's going to feed the headlight and indicators, which are another bone of contention. Indicators. I don't know if you remember some time ago, I made these little things which were going on the bottom of the springs. The previous video. What I've decided to do is to take the groove out, widen it and flatten it to 10mm. And then the indicators, which are LEDs, will go into that groove like that. But as it's Korean crap, the double-sided tape doesn't stick. And another little thing is, on the back of these there's a cut area. It says 12 volt cut here, or you can shorten it or lengthen it and it will still work. But on the back you have live connectors, or live areas, which is okay I suppose if you're putting it on paint, but as I'm putting it on metal, I'm going to do something about that really, and that's going to cause me a problem. So that's how they should be, around there, like that. Yeah, so there we go, another little update, and hopefully we'll have the wiring sorted shortly. If anyone's interested, I can, when I've finished this and tested it, I'll draw it out again, and anyone that wants to fit an M unit can follow it. So there we go, that's another little details, bit of the wiring. Still working on the wiring, as you can see. Got some ribbon cable, which is going, ribbon cable, 2 amp ribbon cable, ideal for the switches in handlebars. They can run up nicely. So it's going to run through the handlebars to the switches and then back to the M unit. Yeah. Another thing I will say, when you're doing wiring, especially on a motorcycle, make sure that you spend some time and do it properly, because I've seen so many bad joints where people use snap locks twisted together sometimes and put a bit of tape around it. I mean, that is just asking for trouble. When you do a solder joint, make sure that the solder is shiny, not flat. If it goes like a mat, then it's a dry joint waiting for trouble. Heat shrink, several types of heat shrink. What I've done with this one, I'll show you a close up if I've got some pictures. It's glue lined, and it shrinks over the braiding, which is a nylon, heavy duty nylon cover which stops abrasion of the cable, and the heat shrink bonds the cable to the braiding, so it's actually a really solid joint. It makes it very tidy. Yeah, just don't skimp on the way you connect wires, because it will come back and bite you in the arse. I know, I've done it, so I take my time. Anyway, hope that's a bit more help, anyone that's doing one, and I'll talk to you soon. I'm going to add this little update at the end of the video, just to show you where I've got so far since the last video, because I haven't uploaded it. Basically what I've done is finished the handlebars and made a little mistake in the wiring, which I'm going to have to correct, so I'll just tell you that first. When I said the side stand switch on this one here, it's actually closed in neutral. Doesn't make really any difference, because the actual wiring would be the same. That would still go to earth as in the previous video, but you can supply 12 volt to a bulb and then direct to the side stand switch, to the neutral switch, sorry, getting confused myself, which will then, when it's closed, obviously when it's in neutral the light will be on, and then when it's open the light would go off. The earthing on the ECU unit would be the same. If it stops when you put it in gear, then we just have to earth this little area here. So yeah, that's one little mistake. The other problem that I've done, nothing to do with that wiring anyway, is there's the gauges and the switches installed, and the little LED lights on the side of the speedo down here. What I'd done with them, as you'll see in a few little bits before, I bonded in the back of the unit and run the wires out through some epoxy. But what I didn't do was leave two earths or two negative rails from the LEDs. I joined all the LEDs, the negative rails together, so I had one cable coming out, which I thought was fine. But the neutral switch obviously doesn't go to earth, it goes to the ECU again. So I've had to put a little miniature relay in to supply the LED with 12 volts. Something that I overlooked, but it will be corrected on the diagram. So once I finish the diagram, it will be as it should be. Just my little mistake, but I can't get back into it to get the cable out, so I'm just going to put a little relay in to supply the voltage to it, a little miniature relay. Which are really handy if you need to use them for other things, but it's a tiny little thing. It's going to be hidden next to the control box. So there's something else we've got to do. Apart from that, that's where we are at the moment. I'll try that again because the battery went flat. This wire here is going to be for the front brake light switch on the lever. That runs through the bars. The cables now run down through the centre of the handlebars down through the yoke. We're going to join up the rest of the wiring down here. The reason I've done that is because I changed the bars. Basically I was going to have straight bars and it would have been easier to put everything in the bars, but as the Z bars are a lot more difficult to run the wires through, and there wasn't really enough space to get the unit in, and besides that I couldn't actually find anyone that had one in stock, and I wanted to get on. I decided to run the wire straight from the switch straight through, and hopefully it will be okay. I'll run it that way instead. It's not really a problem. Just means I've got a few little bits of ribbon cable I've got to connect up, but 4 of these will go to earth anyway, so there's only four wires plus the other switch that comes through here. This will be covered in a braid, same as this. This is the bonded heat shrink and the nylon braid. It's really strong stuff. So yeah, that's about that. The next one will be hopefully the M unit connected up. All I've really got to do now is run these wires back down to where the M unit's going to go, and then put the M unit in and connect it all up, and then I can switch it on. So the next video will be hopefully all the electrics working, and then I can finalise the wiring diagram, and then anyone that wants it I can do a copy. The other thing I'm going to say is I'm actually building this bike in a 10-foot by 6-foot shed. It's pretty tight and you can't get back to see things sometimes, so most of it I'm just eyeballing. It's a small space, but I'm managing to get it done. I haven't even got the bike out the shed yet to eyeball it myself, so that should be rather interesting when I actually see it from a distance myself. Hopefully in the next couple of videos we'll have the wiring sorted, show that all working, and then I'll be doing the brake pipes, the braided lines for the front and rear brake pipes, and then I shall be taking it out the shed and give you some views of it almost complete. So hopefully it'll look okay. Till next time.